And welcome to Frankie Has a Big Mouth twice a month. To make sure that you find us on the YouTube channel. Definitely like us on Facebook and the like. My name is Frankie Darcell. You'll find the entire podcast as well on the iHeartRadio Network, Real Times Media, and the Black Information Network. So today we're going to have a great topic on top of what people know as aid to dependent children or welfare. We're going to talk about whether or not it is a good idea for not only states, but cities to finance poor and low income residents. We're going to get to that. But first, before we start, let me introduce my guest. He is the host of Bro Talk. He is a proud HBCU grad as well. Dexter Stuckey is joining us. Hey, Dexter.
Hey, Frankie, great to be here with you guys again. I love it here.
Very good. There's still a conversation as to whether or not Lincoln University, where you got your undergraduate degree, is the first HBCU, but that's debatable. We'll talk about that.
I don't know why there's a conversation, not with me.
He is a political strategist as well, has worked as a union leader, as well as served for 2 congressional members in Washington, D.C. He is absolutely an insider. Right now running his own business. Duran Marshall is my guest. Hello, Duran.
It's great to be here, Frankie. And I don't know if that's a discussion. I'm sure Morehouse was around the beginning somewhere. Don't really know, but we accept Lincoln in its historical fashion.
See, as a Morgan State University grad, we don't have to brag. We just get it done. I'm just saying. We've had a number of HBCU conversations as we bring in for the very first time. She is a woman that I absolutely adore and love to life. She is brilliant. She is definitely on the pulse of the country. Candace Portman is joining me. She is the executive director of Outlier Media. Welcome to Frankie Has a Big Mouth for the very, very first, and I hope not the last time.
I certainly hope it's not the last time, and I'm so happy to be here.
Now, Ferris State, right?
Yes.
All right.
Started as a logging college.
A logging college.
That's right. So an agricultural institution.
All right.
For those in the know, it is also the home of the country's only Jim Crow museum, started by Dr. David Pilgrim, which is an incredible museum that looks at the history and legacy of Jim Crow in this country.
Oh, that's awesome. And I have to say, as a footnote as well, one of your proud graduates, the Honorable former Congresswoman Carolyn Kilpatrick, received her honorary doctorate degree from Ferris State. So yes, love some Ferris State. Yeah. And I remember driving from Detroit to Ferris State to do an event. And I thought it was going to be a 2 or 3 hour drive. I was like, am I going to drive off into Canada? I didn't know it was that far.
That's right. You've not seen snow until you snow. That's true.
Wow. Thank you for joining us. We're going to start first. Former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, served in the White House under the Biden administration. People were excited about that once she decided not to run for mayor of Atlanta. Clearly, Georgia, if we go back just 2 years, and the role the city of Atlanta played getting the Biden administration into the White House. And then she pretty much, for some on the inside, not surprisingly, stepped down and resigned. But she is now going to be serving as the principal national advisor to a committee on international trade. Duran, are they just trying to find a title for the sister to be in Washington? And I guess this opportunity keeps her more in Atlanta with her family because she does have growing children.
Absolutely. You know, Keisha Lance Bottoms is a dynamic young lady. When she came in to be mayor of Atlanta, she came in with a great deal of, fanfare. A lot of people were excited. I think her low point might have been the George Floyd situation and the riots that occurred. And some of that, was being, pushed in by the Republican Party because remember, they were trying to position themselves for the next election. So they wanted chaos and disruption in order to win Georgia. It took her hard, I think, and having young kids, she had to make some other decisions, right? And so at a 70% approval rating, she chose not to rerun for office and she chose to come, and work on behalf. I think her first position was a public engagement advisor, which also takes a lot of time. So, it's not, almost still requires you to go to D.C. Well, that doesn't work well with your husband and your children back in Atlanta. So her movement out and then now her new position still allows her the flexibility, but still be engaged in the office. And of course, it's mutually beneficial for the administration to have a deep connection in Atlanta as well.
Yeah. Now, Candace, you've been in the media game for a very long time. The other side of that conversation is for elected officials. Once they step down, you're no longer mayor, you're no longer president, you're no longer congressional member, you're no longer Senate. It's hard now to be a regular citizen with just the title.
Right.
So there's a learning curve, not necessarily just about Keisha Lance Bottoms, but just elected officials making that transition to being a title. You have some protections, Donald Trump, when you're president and you're no longer president, you're having to answer questions. Candace, your thought on that?
I think that sure, you lose the title, but do you really lose the power? I don't know if that's 100% accurate. I think that power tends to follow the powerful, no matter whether they have the title or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so in her case, while she certainly might not hold the title in the White House or in the mayor's office, she certainly is well connected enough to be able to get things done as she might see fit. But I do want to address one thing. I think it's very interesting because she is a woman that the sort of earnest of raising her family sits on her.
Yeah.
If this was a conversation about a man, his family would never come up,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
He needs to stay home to raise his kids. So I just want to call that out as sort of like an interesting bias that we started off immediately with. I'm sure that they have enough resources to ensure that their children are well taken care of, regardless of whether she's at the White House.
I will tell you, part of that conversation for me is when I saw her, with great respect, because I think she is dynamic. But it's a different level of pressure. People really don't know how stressful it is when you are under the camera or in front of a camera on a national stage like that. And I thought that level of pressure, when you are the sitting president, because one of the things I remember the Honorable Coleman Young saying, that the day he stepped down after it was Dennis Archer who succeeded him, and he said he kept looking at his phone waiting for it to ring. So you don't necessarily lose a lot of relationships. You do lose a lot of power. I could tell you as a radio talent, I know that 80% of the people I deal with is because I have a microphone in my face.
Now that's fair.
If I don't have that microphone in my face, a lot of folks they don't need the conversation, and I'm coming from that perspective, Candace.
There's some beauty in peace. If you can get it, take it. And especially once you've done the work, if you've done the work, and maybe Keisha feels different, I don't know. But if you've done the work, and she's young, she has plenty of opportunities ahead, including if she wanted to run for mayor again, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And if she wanted to pick that back up and do it again, I'm sure there are enough incredible strategists that could get that done for her.
Yeah. So Dexter, your thought on that, and then Joran, I'll come back to you on the fact that she is now going to be the national advisor on a committee to trade, and clearly coming out of COVID when we could not get baby formula. Candace, we do need a mother to understand the babies need to be fed.
Clearly.
Honestly, I think Candace and Duran did a really good job summing it up, because both of them put out amazing points. I didn't know that she had a 70% approval rating, because it was really funny, because when she was, and I do think this speaks to her being a woman too, when I saw the COVID stuff and the George Floyd stuff, she was on TV screaming, "Atlanta, go home." I saw it. They were at the CNN building destroying it, and she was like, "Enough is enough, I'm done with this," so forth and so on. And it was it's damn, that is really intense. And I do think that speaks to her being a woman. I also think Candace made a really good point where it's because she's a woman, she has to be home rocking the babies and stuff. Because if this was a man, either the family would move to DC or they would be fine with her, with him being in DC doing what he has to do. So I think
I am woman, hear me roar.
Yeah, right.
I just want to follow up and say, and I do take Candace's point tremendously. I think that she has 4 adopted children, and so it was a tremendous effort, I think, to be away from them and flying home every weekend, which is what she was doing when she was here. And her family, her and her husband, had decided not to actually move to DC to disrupt their lives, I think. So I think her moving home was still in the concert of taking care of the kids. And so I don't want you, Candace, to believe I was inferring that maybe she needed to be there, because the husband is also being the dynamic husband as well at home with the kids.
I've already put up the Facebook status. It's too late.
All right, so listen, here's a concept that has turned into policy around the country, where there are already initiatives in place. Los Angeles, parts of Louisiana, which was surprising, especially being a Republican state. But they're looking at it in a city like Philadelphia, and it's going on in Los Angeles, where they're calling the program, which is to subsidize low income families and for pregnant women. We know the term welfare or aid to dependent children, but the program is calling no cash attached, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what it is it is an opportunity for locally cities to subsidize and give residents, low income residents, income money that they don't have to pay back. It sounds just like aid to dependent children, or as some still call it, welfare. And they don't have to give this money back. And most of these individuals, as I've kind of researched it, live in low income housing. We know that cities like Philadelphia are some of the biggest poor cities, Chicago, Los Angeles, and the like. And the question we'll start with, especially Duran, with you, with your political background, is it a good idea? Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day.
That's right.
Teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Your thought?
Well, a couple of things. We're not going to forget in the last presidential election, there was a discussion about having a baseline income for all citizens. And the discussion was because, certain cities, the problem is that the tax base, when people are not working, the tax base, so how do you then take care of this? The streets, the lights, that comes off of the tax base. So if you just believe everybody's just going to get their own money, you also have there's ramifications to that, where there's not taxes being paid and things and services not being taken care of. So creating a base income actually helps in many ways, because if you start talking about low income, they actually spend that money in the economy, which flips and begins to do something.
You believe that it is a good thing that local.
I believe it's a great idea.
You believe that local municipalities should continue to give these individuals.
I'm going to tell you why I believe it's a great idea. We have no problem giving that same dynamic to corporations. We have no problem giving tax breaks without strings to corporations. No problem. Many of them pay no taxes. And so now when it comes to citizens, the actual baseline of this country, we're going to say, oh no, maybe it's too much for them, but it's not too much for IBM. When IBM paid no taxes, it's not too much for other corporations who pay. So I just think that, and look, those corporations, they spend their money overseas. Those individuals in the community, they actually spend their money at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. So really, where's the cost-benefit analysis? I believe the ROI happens with the citizens more than they will corporations.
All right, Dexter, I want to come to you. You
already know. Now you already know. You already know.
And I'm waiting for it.
This is ridiculous. It don't make no sense at all. Like, I'm not going for it. Who's funding this? Oh, I know who's funding this. Me. It's coming out of my pocket. So basically, what you're saying is, if I want Philadelphia to give me some extra money, I should just not work at all because they'll take care of me. This is another system like welfare that people will abuse and stay on for generations. Like this, absolutely not. And I will say this too. Yes, I do agree with what you're saying, Darana, is like these people will absolutely spend this money in the city. They 100% will. The same way these same individuals got those PPP loans and spent that money within the city on Lamborghinis and BMWs and whatnot. People are going to poorly use this money, like they poorly use the PPP loan money, and like they poorly use their welfare money now. It's not a good idea. I think that if we want to take care of our citizens, we should come up with ways to do it, but giving them tax-free money that they don't have to pay back is insane.
All right, Candace, I come to you.
So I think,
and it's okay to go at Dexter. We do it regularly.
He agrees with
Dexter, I absolutely don't agree with you. And the data tells me not to agree with you. So the narratives that you're throwing out that people abuse welfare, that people abuse PPP loans, certainly there are cases in both instances. People abuse all sorts of systems. And I think it's really important to remember, particularly our conversation at the top about corporations. If you talk about abuse of welfare systems, really that's where you should be looking. Because what you're talking about is pennies compared to millions and billions millions of dollars. But I also think that we have really good research that already exists from other countries that have tried a universal basic income, not just for folks living in poverty, but also for like the entire city, right? So it didn't matter what, right? Exactly. It didn't matter what income level you set at. You got an extra $1,000 a month to do with whatever you want. And you can see things like childhood issues start to decline. We also saw that same thing when we were getting checks during COVID. You start to see
I didn't get one. Let me just be clear. I got zero.
Oh, so sorry.
That's so sorry. I'm going to bring up that as an angel advocate, but finish your point, Candace.
Sure. Might I encourage you to work in nonprofits? So, but I think that, we see good research of what happens when people live at a baseline, right? So we're not talking about making people wealthy. We're not talking about people being able to buy Lamborghinis. What we are talking about is people being able to feed their children, clothe their children, provide good health care for their children, get their kids back and forth to school. And in places like Detroit and Philly and Baltimore and Memphis, it is really imperative because we are talking about Black children at that point, right? And Black families.
Yeah. Frankie, can I jump in? Dexter, your comment almost sounds like Ronald Reagan welfare mothers.
Well,
I mean,
which has been disproven.
Right. Are we going to look at a few subsets and make that the narrative? And that tends to be the problem when we talk about things. We find the worst extreme and we make that the narrative.
I don't think that's what's happening here.
Maybe all of us on this screen, income was over the amount that we could have gotten some PPP. But let me tell you who did get it. Your beauty salon person, because you got to go get your hair done, your nail tech, maybe they got it. Maybe your car service that you use, they received it. Because they had employees, because if it not been for that extra money, they may all went out of business.
And that's true. And that's true. And
there was a larger ramification of that.
I won't disagree with that. I 100% agree with that. I do agree with that. But I do know that it obviously corporations are abusing, and we even did bailouts with corporations before we even received money from the government. I completely understand that. But I just think that when we have these conversations, we tend to pretend like this stuff is not happening. And we'll say, oh, it's a small amount of people. There are millions of people who are on a list of PPP loans, stuff like that. And I know them. I'm related to some of them who never owned a business in their life. They did not do it. They took advantage of the system. And we're pretending, in my opinion, like this doesn't happen. And it does.
I don't think that anybody's pretending. I think we're looking at data, and you're saying that a couple of people, but you're talking about millions of people. So you see how you're inverting those numbers yourself? That is literally what the system does, right? The system likes to let us believe that because we know 2 people who did something, then millions of people are doing something. Mm-hmm. And also, if you know 2 people who did that, did you turn them into the FBI?
I will.
Well, go for it. I'd love to see it.
Now, I would say to each of you, and when we look at these types of programs and the millions of dollars that was given to cities, and when we think about this is like a little slightly to the left, to deal with crime prevention, major cities across the country were able to get that money, and it has not really put a dent in that issue. However, when we talk about those kinds of programs, I'd like to also include the conversation of better opportunities for education in the communities and improving some of the schools in those areas. So I get that. I get because people at the end of the day need to eat today. They need to be able to get to and from work today. But I do think that there should be some regulations with that. There should be some, where you receive this. Have you looked for a job this week?
Right. Frankie, can I say this though?
Yes.
To your point, and I think your point is valid, and I think there has to be strings attached. But I think there needs to be strings attached to all money. And we can't allow corporations to define how we think of the public. So they want no strings. We don't challenge that. That's billions and trillions of dollars. But when it comes to the common citizen that we deal with every day, that we happen to see, that we want them to, you got to go out and get a job. I believe that I've worked my whole life. I believe it has a larger ramification to their children. Their children need to see them work. There's a larger, but the subset of people that are not working and not trying to work, it's a small group of people.
Yeah.
And most people want an opportunity and they're trying to get into it, but we've allowed, I'm a former labor leader. We've allowed a corporate thinking in order for us to evaluate each other, but not evaluate them.
Well, and let me just say, we do talk about those companies and those individuals, including elected officials who receive, write-offs on their PPP loans. So here on Frankie's Got a Big Mouth, we did talk about and call those people out. I'll say that. Listen, I want to give each of you an opportunity for closing comments on this and whether or not you agree or disagree with this program, and then what's on your mind. I'm going to start with you, Dexter.
I don't necessarily agree with it. I love to be schooled by Candace and Deron. I thought that was, I commend you guys. I think that was great. And I do think maybe I should do some research outside of the people that I know and the stuff that I see on social media. However, until I do that, I'm still going to say, no, I don't think this is a good idea. I think that they already have welfare and they can stick with that for now. And closing comments. There's a thing that's been going around, and I think we really need to put a stop to it when it comes to the birthday dinners. When it comes to like going out to gatherings with friends and whatnot, we're not paying for the birthday person anymore. Like, you come out with your money just like we did, and we're all going to just pay our parts. And I will give you a $25 gift card, and you go on about your way. Because I wasn't planning to pay for lobster and shrimp for you. We're not doing that anymore.
Listen, to Dexter's point, I'm just curious, and I want people to understand when I'm saying this, that we have moved the needle of what is just basic etiquette so far to the left.
Yes,
graduation season, I always get the graduation invite. I always get the announcement about, they call them trunk shows in Philadelphia. They call them open houses in Michigan, or whatever you call it. I always get that. And most of the time, and listen, I want to say this for anybody watching this that I know personally. You know who you are. Okay, said that. But I always get that. And most of the time, I know the parent and not the kid. Sometimes I might be in an organization and I don't know the person that well. So I can navigate through all of that. But I'm saying, what happened to sending a good old-fashioned thank you card? If you thought enough of me to send me an invite and text me an invite, and I send you a gift, send me a thank you card. Do not send me a text. Do not send me an email, because my gift was not an email.
Right.
Yeah. You cash my check and then say thank you.
And I'm not totally blaming the kids on that. I'm blaming the parents.
You shouldn't blame the kids. It's the parents. My mother was the person that made me sit down. You can't go out tonight until these thank you cards are done.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Absolutely. I bought Fallon when she went to college. Listen, Candace, almost 10 years ago. Can you believe it?
I can't believe that.
Can you believe it?
Well, that was only that means I'm 25.
25, right. But I just want people to know that etiquette is still a thing.
It is.
I had a young person say to me about this very conversation about sending a thank you card. Is that a thing? Yeah, chick, it's a thing.
And the post office still operates.
Yes,
it does. It does. All right. Thank you for that, Dexter. Send thank you cards. It is a wonderful thing to do. Deron, I'll go to you.
So just to follow up with our previous conversation, then add into this last discussion, I think that, it's good to have skepticism in the midst of conversation. It's not good. If we're all on here and it's all monolithic, it's a problem. We need to have different perspectives. That allows us to moderate and really look at what we do. No matter what we give out, it should be monitored. You can't, the government is left with the responsibilities of those tax dollars from you and I. They have to make sure that those tax dollars are spent wisely, which is the reason a lot of Dexter's friends might not have to turn in, because many of them are being prosecuted by the Justice Department right now. So, but nonetheless, I think that I'm hoping that through a lot of the discussion that's taking place with, particularly as it regards to veterans, and we always have this surface discussion about mental challenges and veterans dealing with, coming back home. But now we have a different dynamic. It's not just a bunch of men coming back looking for jobs. So many women are also in that discussion. And so this large discussion is taking place in D.C., where we're holding up military advancement of men and women, particularly many cases minorities in the military, because you're worried about someone who may be serving in Texas going and having an abortion somewhere else, maybe where they're from, where it's legal. it is ridiculous. And then the other side says, well, you guys are making wokeism. No, it sounds like you're the one that's trying to be more woke than anything. And what happened to the separation of church and state? We're doing too much. And so as a society, we got to speak out, and we got to let these guys know next election, this is way too much. And we're starting to change our future because we're allowing them to stick a plank in the past.
All right, great. Thank you for that. So Candace, agree, disagree on the no strings attached payout and your closing comments?
I don't know if I can agree or disagree as a operating journalist, but I will say that the research shows us that there are real benefits to people living under a fair and living wage, right? So that I can absolutely agree with, that people should have a living wage. And however they get to that living wage, we need to make sure that most of our residents are living under that wage. And I'll say the thing that is on my mind right now, and actually this conversation brought it home. I need everyone listening to find a trusted news source, particularly a local trusted news source. And I don't care if it's a news organization or a local journalist that you just really trust, and to fact check your information against fact checked, accurate, valuable journalism. So I'm not talking about both sides. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about political coverage. I'm talking about like basic information you need to understand how your city, county, state, region works. It is so valuable. And I am really fearful that, we know what social media has done to people's ability to process information. And much of that is because we're processing too much. So we're really losing our ability to be able to figure out what is, fact from fiction. And so I just want everyone listening to make sure that you look up and find a local trusted news service where you are. Philly, there are a lot, Frankie in Philly, there are a lot of great organizations, including Resolve Philly. And I bet you I could find one in every single place, including Capital B, which is a nonprofit newsroom launched to serve communities of color just a couple years ago. So please, everybody, find a newsroom, support that newsroom.
All right, great. I appreciate the conversation. Always good to have you here. Kansas, this cannot be your last time. We have some incredible conversations, and as we move forward, kind of somewhat on a hiatus because it's summertime and people are getting out there, but I want to make sure that incredible voices are always heard right here on Frankie's Got a Big Mouth. Dexter Stuckey, Duron Marshall, Candace Portman, I appreciate you. Don't forget, go to YouTube, click like, join us there, and definitely listen on the iHeartRadio app, Black Information Network, and of course, right here on Real Times Media. I'm Frankie Darcell. We'll do it again next time.